Hey y'all, it's Two Woke Podcast coming to y'all with episode number 7 is me, Danny Simone.
And your girl, Low Key C. Welcome back.
Yeah, so we also have a special guest here today. Go ahead, C, and introduce your homeboy that we got with us here.
For sure. So this time around, we kind of wanted to go in a different direction in reading Patriarchy Blues by Frederick Joseph. And we didn't want to have a conversation around this book without having a male perspective. And so when we were thinking about, well, who could we bring on the podcast this time? My first thought was you because, you know, I've always felt like we're intellectual peers.
Absolutely.
And I've always just, you know, respected your opinion on things. So I thought you would be great to bring on. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
And first and foremost, I appreciate y'all for having me for sure.
Yes.
I go by Kay Nellz, Kaynellz. Again, intellectual, thought leader, you know, reader, writer, creator, rapper, poet. Hyphen. I mean, all of that good stuff. But no, I'm a human being first. And then all of those things come after. So I'm excited just to kind of to set the stage for y'all perspective of me just a little bit. I'm approaching this with a level of openness and vulnerability that I usually don't exhibit. Around these topics. I have a like all of us, I don't want to make it seem like it's something exclusive to me, but I have a pretty unique lived experience in my family dynamic and stuff like that I don't always put on the forefront. So in going through this book, I was like, okay, if we're going to have the conversation, we got to have the conversation. So I'm open and I plan to do more listening than talking because I'm still learning and growing and evolving as well. So I just wanted to say that, but I appreciate y'all for having me. Thank you.
I mean, we appreciate you for coming on and being open to just, you know, listening, being receptive to what we're talking about, sharing your own personal perspectives and experiences. So we can go ahead and jump in.
I'm excited. So as C mentioned, we're going to be covering the Patriarchy Blues by Frederick Joseph today. This was an amazing read. You know, I'm so excited to have Kay Nellz here because I definitely wanted to get that male's perspective as well. So the first topic I wanted to talk about, it was a chapter titled False Binary. And he talked a lot about, you know, just the gender roles, essentially, of what is expected of boys and men, what's expected of girls and women. And at one point, he talked about crying and boys crying. I want to quote him from the book. He said, "If a boy is taught at home or in society that boys don't cry, he will become a man who may not believe in empathy or compassion, maybe even see them as weaknesses. Those weaknesses will be replaced by something deemed more appropriate and aligned, such as anger." And man, this this one really hit home for me, y'all, because I used to work as a nanny in childcare. So I had this family that I worked for. It was a family of 3 boys. They were, like 5, 7, 9. So pretty young. I had my hands full.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. One day we was getting ready for school and they was just showing out, and especially the oldest one. And I don't know, like I kept telling him like, bro, I need you to work with me. Come on. Like he was just giving me a lot of pushback that morning. He just was in a mood. I don't know what it was. Then he starts crying. I'm already pissed off. And I'm like, oh my God. And I told him, look, I was like, straight up, stop crying like a little girl. And I felt so bad. Yo, in that moment, like I heard myself and I was like, oh my God, that was so wrong. And I immediately apologized. And I was like, yo, my bad. Like you're allowed to cry. You know, it's okay. You have feelings. Boys are allowed to have feelings. Like I don't want you to feel like I'm setting some precedent for you that you can't cry. Okay. So this chapter and this topic specifically definitely spoke to me because it is something that is just so deeply ingrained in our society. Like these rules, like boys don't cry. They just get mad, right? And girls, we cry. And then, you know, then it's is wrong for us to be angry, you know? So it's just like all of these emotions, they're just human emotions.
Yeah.
You know?
Where a lot of times with men, anger gets interpreted as passion. And with women, it gets interpreted with a negative connotation. So you could put any adjective in there that you want to.
Bitch.
Yeah, but typically when you see anger from a woman, from a societal standpoint, we're not conditioned to accept it as the complexities of human emotion. It's stigmatized into this thing that a woman is, once they start behaving in a certain way, then it becomes a thing. And then it's other layers to that too, but I'll stop there.
When's the last time you cried?
That's a good question.
Probably. It's probably been like, I want to say like, on the earliest, I want to say about 6 months, but probably about a year.
Okay.
So anywhere that's 6 months to, because I do horrible with time. So disclaimer, I do horrible with time. Because once I learned, as a young man, I learned that time was a manufactured concept. So I was like, man, I want to get to a point where I can live my life absent of time. Like the sunrise and the sunset. And that's a day. And as far as time is concerned, that's the only thing that we truly know. It's like, and I started to kind of live that way, but at the same time, I still have to adhere to time in societal structure. You got to be to work on time. You got to be here on time. You know what I mean? Things like that. So I say that to say I do horrible with time in recollection. So I want to say 6 months to a year. And the reason why, so I don't have any problem with crying.
Okay.
Interesting dynamic. I could relate to what he said in the book a lot about that. But
about not being allowed to cry growing up and stuff like that.
Even though that wasn't my lived experience, I could relate to it. It was different. Like my father is a Marine. My father is very charismatic, but like he's very stoic. I've never seen my father cry.
Yeah.
He at my, I want to say my grandmother's funeral. So his mother. It was like the Denzel Washington and Glory tear. That might have been the extent of it. Yeah, that might have been the extent of it. And I can't remember if I'm getting my grandmother mixed up with my great grandmother, because that tear may have came at my great grandmother's funeral. Okay. I think that's what I recall. Okay. So it was actually my great grandmother's, his grandmother's funeral. Okay. It was the one Denzel Washington and Glory tear. His mother, and everybody got to say their salutations. Yeah. So it wasn't, at the funeral, he was just real stoic and chilling. Yeah. And so like literally, that's the type of environment, like my dad didn't cry. My brothers, I have older brothers, like my older brothers, tough as nails. You know what I mean? So it was just like, it wasn't, they didn't never say you couldn't cry, but it was just a dynamic that I learned to regulate my emotions as I learned and lived through a real world experience. So I never felt the pressure of don't cry because you're a boy. Right. But at the same time, I never seen men cry. So I was just like, right. So I was just like, no, that's real. We good. And then I learned to regulate. Yeah.
Something that really struck me in the book though, I don't remember if it was in that particular chapter, but Joseph recalled when one of his friends passed away, I think it was, and how he was at the funeral and at the repast and everything. And he was channeling his hurt and his pain through anger, and how like he was standing in the corner, fist balled up, and his friend's mother came up to him and said, "You haven't cried for my son once." And he was, he basically was like, I'm gonna get him back or something like that. I'm ad-libbing, but and then his mother basically was like, "No, just go ahead and cry because." My son is not here because of all the boys who didn't cry, all the boys who weren't allowed to cry, who channeled their hurt and frustration into anger and violence. And that really stuck with me because I feel like that's a huge problem in our community. Young boys don't have that chance.
Healthy outlet.
Healthy outlet to express their emotions.
When they're not seeing it modeled to them, because it's great that you had a household where they weren't just like, oh, boys can't cry. Because you got to think about how many people do grow up in those kind of environments where it is like that. No,
that's a very real reality. That's a very real reality for a lot of people, a lot of men.
And I think he even touched on that in the book too, how women, even like the single mothers can kind of reinforce a lot of these patriarchal ideologies and whatnot. And even when he talked about, I felt kind of bad for him when his mom made him go get his Pokemon card.
He had to go out there and fight.
I get it was a lesson, but I think she even felt kind of bad too. Like after the fact, it's not like she was just trying to be cruel or anything, because she felt like, this is a young Black boy. He's going to grow into a Black man. I want him to survive out here. It's like that. So that was a really interesting insight into just his personal experience.
And that was probably I think of the entire book, that's probably the most relational to me, only because I was a very meek and docile kid. So I was born with a speech impediment.
Okay.
I didn't start speaking clearly. I didn't start talking until I was like 4 or 5.
Wow.
And
I would never have guessed that.
Right?
Whoa.
And then when I did started talking, I had a real bad stutter. But the caveat was I could read without impediment, or I could sing a song without impediment, or I could recite poetry and rap. That's how I started in music. Like, that's why I got so comfortable as an artist, as a rapper, as a poet, because I couldn't get through a sentence without stuttering.
Yeah.
But my favorite song was Nas' Life's a Bitch. You know what I mean? But I could rap that word for word, and I didn't even know what I was rapping. I just remember my oldest sister telling me, "Yo, don't let mommy hear you singing that." Literally, and it was so funny, the realization of even learning like what he was talking about. I didn't know, but I could rap it. But so that's why like even my normal talking cadence is very rhythmic. And people be like, "Yo, I thought you was rapping." Like I'll be talking to him like, "Yo, you sound like you was that I was like, "Nah." So my cadence, I have a rhythm with my cadence because that's how I learned to speak and articulate clearly. And so I share that to say, like, I was like, when I say when I didn't want to hurt a fly, like I was the most softest, meek, most docile kid you could come across. Yeah. But the environment that we lived in, if I had to remain that kid, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. And so like, I was bullied endlessly as a kid. And it was always because it was that I didn't have the gumption to, be aggressive in that way. But it was also coupled with, I had two different ideologies from my parents. My father, the Marine, who said, if anybody come in striking distance and you think they're a threat, you okay to defend yourself. So he would teach us, if you can reach out and touch them and you feel like they're a threat, they are too close. And at that point, don't wait for them to do anything to you. You be the aggressor in that scenario to protect yourself. And then my mother's like, you better not, is a real Christian woman. Like, you turn the other cheek. Like, you better not be out here fighting and none of that. Like, and one lesson that she taught even back then, she said, fighting is the language of those who can't articulate themselves in any other way. And that's not you. So she always postured like fighting is like an easy way out, like a cop out for weakness. She almost attached it to weakness. Now, my mother was the disciplinarian. My father was like real, like, as long as he come home from work and his drink is in the refrigerator and it's cold, like he cool. Like he gonna watch the Westerns. He gonna watch the news. That's his thing. Very simple. So me and my father's, I didn't have a fear of him. I was fearful of my mother. It was like a fear as a child. And so one of the reasons why, and this is not, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming her at all. Me and my mother have a great relationship. Me and my dad have a great relationship. So I don't want to sound like I'm blaming. But the reason why I got bullied for as long as I did is because I was more fearful of my mother than the person bullying me. So it's like my mother say, don't fight. I just got to lick my wounds and cover it up and lie about this, that, and the third. And so I would get chased home from, from school, from the bus stop or whatever. I would get jumped all the time. I'd get beat up like some of the kids in the neighborhood. And these is people that to this day, like when I go back home to my hometown in Maryland, like I see we got so much love and kinship for each other. Because one thing that I learned, I never harbored any negative emotions towards them. Because the moment I started fighting back, I stopped getting bullied. So that's why I said I could relate to it. Like literally,
that's real.
The moment I fought back. It was like, oh, he'll fight
stopped.
back. And then it was like, and then we became closer as friends.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I realized that they were operating in a dysfunction that they didn't even understand.
Yeah.
And so I was just at their mercy. Now, thankfully enough, like me, I didn't interpret that in a negative way.
Yeah.
Where I'll say adversely affected me in my childhood. Like some people get bullied and they never recover from it. And I
they
feel
become
for
the
them.
bullies.
Yeah.
They just
And
go
I
through
feel
life
for them.
Yeah.
being
For
an
me,
asshole.
it wasn't that. Right.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't that. It was like we neighborhood kids. We see each other every day. Like, my clothes not clean. They not good. They, I mean, holes in them. It's not the latest fashion, not the latest Jordans and none of that. So it was just like, I just saw it through a different lens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just credit that to this gift that God gave me of understanding. I felt like even as a child, I understood at a level far beyond my years.
Yeah.
I
And
can
so,
relate to that
That's
for
right.
sure.
So when I got to that part of the book, it was like, now my mother never pushed me out and say, don't come back in without your cards.
Yeah.
But at some point, I just got tired of getting beat up.
Yeah. Nah,
I
that's
mean,
real.
my mother definitely. I also had a fear of my
Yeah.
mother, but she was the opposite. She was like, "Oh, somebody in your space.
Yeah.
You hit them before they hit you
Yeah.
back."
Yeah.
And she, like in middle school, when people tried to bully me, she would take me to go fight.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
I mean, I didn't get in
interesting.
very many fights growing
Yeah.
up, but when it was time to fight, it was time to fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what it was all about. So even with me, it's like at that point, once I started to fight, it's like, all right, then I'm willing to fight.
Right.
Yeah, and he even mentions that in the book. Like
Yeah.
once he got in that one fight, when he tried to get his Pokemon cards
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
it just kind of unleashed something.
Yeah,
Right.
he
where
got a
was
high
like-
off it.
Right.
He got a
Yeah.
high off it. And he
Oh,
didn't
for
even
sure.
realize it. So that's why he went seeking that, because it gave him a level of validation that he otherwise didn't get in his life at the time.
Yeah.
So he was validated by defending himself. And a lot of times, from the lived experience of a young black male, that happens often.
Yeah.
But the vice is different. Like for him, it was that in defending himself, he felt a power and authority over his autonomy that he had never felt before.
Right.
He always lived at mercy of.
Right.
That vice could show itself in many things. Sometimes it's weed, sometimes it's sex, sometimes it's
Right.
gambling, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's other lifestyle things. But it's all rooted in really a sense of self-awareness and identity. And so that in many ways, I feel like all of the lived experience is nuanced, so I don't want to group everybody together. But the black lived experience is unique because most of us at a very early age suffer from some sort of identity crisis. And if we don't have healthy ideas to identify ourselves with early on, we go out and we seek those things. And whatever validates us first and give us that feeling of autonomy, we lean into.
Yeah.
And for him, it was this fight.
Fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was like, okay, it gave me a power, and that power gave me a rush. So
Give me
now,
respect. People stop
Exactly.
trying to bother
Yeah,
me,
for sure.
or trying me.
exactly. Whereas me, I could have took that same road, but fighting didn't give me that sense of validation because, and I credit God and I credit my parents because for as long as I can remember, I felt connected to a purpose greater than myself. So being able to win a fight would never validate me.
Yeah.
It seemed like
Because I've
you
always felt-
had a strong sense of identity
Correct.
about who
Strong
you
sense of
are.
self.
For as long as I have memory,
Right.
my earliest memories, I felt again empowered to a purpose that was greater than myself.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of us do come into this world feeling like we have a purpose, but it's not always nurtured.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in those early years. So when
It's
you
tough.
have that,
It's tough.
it sets you up.
Yeah, because I'm like, I know I didn't really come into myself. I'm always amazed by like young people that
Yeah,
really
who
just
really know
they just know
themselves.
who they are.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful thing. So yeah, shout out to your parents
For sure.
that for sure.
For sure.
And you were touching on about just like your identity
Correct.
as a man.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how do you define like manhood?
It's manhood for me is defined as it's not a singular thing, obviously. It's I know, yo, it's all good. they always listening.
Right.
Manhood to me is defined by understanding first. I feel like understanding is important. Compassion, confidence, safety, emotional regulation. Because knowing, and that's when I say understanding, that understanding lends itself to the emotional regulation so much. A lot of times when you don't understand something, there's very few things that's more frustrating.
Yeah.
Just remove all of the other topics, just dealing with just not knowing something that you feel you need to know or understand. Not understanding something is extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And so having understanding is outside of yourself. The idea of manhood that I question even now in everything, and even before reading the literature, but being exposed to the literature and his perspective through his lived experience, I bounced around a lot of ideas over the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's why I say I would definitely listen to perspective. And I even had conversations with women in my circle of influence to get a better understanding. Because for me, it's a human thing, but another important aspect of manhood is self-awareness for me. And the biggest thing you can do in terms of self-awareness is knowing your blind spots. I always express to people, like, having the awareness to know where I may fall short, and therefore I can A, work on it, and or B, align myself with people that can help fill those blind spots for me while I work on it. So that's not an inadequacy.
Right.
And it's a saying that goes, whoever discovered water wasn't a fish. When you in it, it's not water. It's just the environment. You've never seen a fish, never seen any other environment until they pulled out the water. And it's like, what is going on? I know this is not an environment conducive.
Put me back.
Exactly. And so my ideas of manhood, I had to look at through the same lens.
Okay. Well, just kind of playing off that, Frederick, I do want to talk about how he defined patriarchy, which is a little bit different than manhood. But
Correct.
He defines it as the emotional, physical, mental, metaphysical, political, social, and economic manifestation of the false belief and oppressive ideology that individuals and groups aligned with what is subjectively deemed to be femininity and or womanhood are inferior or of lesser value than the subjective opposite, i.e. masculinity and or manhood.
Correct.
So I'm curious how you resonate with that definition.
I understand. It's first of all, it's a mouthful.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's purposeful because I think that a
he
lot
wanted
of it
to
is
make
subjective.
sure he connected.
Yeah. Super inclusive.
Yeah, everything to the idea. I agree with it. In my idea, and this is where I started looking at, okay, let's assess myself in my not only my worldview, but in relation to the women in my life and how I interact with them. So that's what I started doing. And I never looked at women as inferior, and I think it's counterproductive to compare. Like, so for me, this is the biggest challenge. This is my ideology. My ideology is men and women are to align because we are each other's greatest assets. When we create true alignment with one another, we don't, and again, this is going to sound like an oversimplification, obviously, but when we create true alignment with one another, the ideas of patriarchy doesn't have the power to persist because I'm never invalidating your autonomy for the sake of my own ego. So for me, it's everything about my worldview as it pertains to women is about alignment. Now, where it gets more nuanced is where the conversation becomes about gender roles and things like that. And that's when, I say I'll be willing to be vulnerable.
Like in the position of women in a greater societal context.
I firmly believe in gender roles.
Okay.
And I don't think that takes away from the value and autonomy of a woman.
Okay.
I feel like we've created this. So I'll talk the religion that I learned first. The first religion I learned is Christianity. I don't subscribe to Christianity at present day. I don't describe to any religion present day.
Likewise,
I always say my religion is love.
Yeah.
But I can have much more deeper conversations about that too. Different time, different place. But in the religion that I learned it, like I said, my mother was very diligent about keeping us in the church. So every time the church doors was open, we was in there.
Yeah.
And I was being groomed for leadership within the church. So I've been through levels of Christianities and layer of Christianity that the average person probably hasn't. I've preached in a pulpit on Sunday at 11 years old because I was told from the time I could, like I say, remember I told you, as long as I can remember, I was told like strangers will walk up to me and I have a lot of siblings. It's not just me. And they would tell my mother, he's special. We would be in Baltimore in the middle of nowhere, don't know nobody on a Saturday. And they'll walk up to you like, this is your son? Like, he's special. He's meant to lead. So I've always been told that, I always felt like this greater sense of self. Now I share that to say, in Christianity, if you believe in creation, the story of creation says God spoke everything into existence, right? He said, let there be light, and there was light. He said, let there be heaven, let there be earth, and there was separation of heaven and earth. Everything he spoke into life. But then when it came to the idea of man, and I'll air quote it, he could have said, let there be man. Or God could have said, let there be man. He didn't. He said, let me take time to form you in my image and likeness, based on what the religious text says. And then he breathed life. And then the story is told that then God saw that man needed a helpmate, and so he removed the rib to create woman. Now, how I interpret that was that in order for you to remove one from another, then that means both had to exist in the same entity. So for me, if he say, as the story of creation is told, it say God saw it and it was good. After he created everything, he saw it, God saw it was good. So he saw man. I said it was good and perfect. So the existence of the masculine and feminine is perfection to me, based on how I learn religion and spirituality, based on the story of creation. Because the way I interpret that now, and what I know now, is that the masculine and feminine both existed in an individual being, and they were separated to be two different beings. Right. And in that, whatever reason for that separation, I'm not going to get into, who knows. Yeah. But looking at that at the surface, for me, it made me feel like I am incomplete without the feminine. Because the masculine and feminine, that duality is not we get caught up in the physical representation nowadays. And I understand why, based on patriarchy, based on societal conditioning. Yeah. Well, if we remove the conditions of society, there's not an entity, a physical entity attached to feminism or the masculine, right? Femininity and masculinity, there's not an individual entity. The flesh came with societal constructs. Right. So if the feminine and the masculine exist in one being, which all of us have, both the feminine and the masculine, our understanding of it is going to help us be whole. And then we can view things in our interactions differently. So I share that to say I never wanted to feel like, and I'm not infallible. So there's many ways, being honest with myself and being vulnerable, that I'm sure I perpetuate patriarchy. Yeah. In my understanding of the masculine and feminine, one thing I can say confidently, I never looked at a woman in any facet of my life to say she was less than me in any capacity. Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, I like the word you mentioned. You align with the woman.
Correct.
Most men ain't trying to align with the woman.
They're not.
They trying to lead and like control.
And that wording is important because there is absolute alignment is important, because there is going to be times where everything that you offer in your whole feminine is going to need to take precedent in whatever situation we're in. And I'm going to go back to that word self-aware. That's why manhood for me, one of the self-awareness is important, because I have to be aware enough to say, this is where because she's protecting my blind spot. If she wasn't, then what we doing? That's where the alignment comes into play. It's never me more than you or you more than me. And so it's like, if people understood alignment better, then, I always metaphor, like, why do you need an alignment on your car? Right? The wheels need to be aligned to assure for the comfortability of the ride, because if there wasn't, when you take your hand off the steering wheel, it'll veer in one direction. Yeah. Right? But it won't keep you... alignment right now.
Just talk to you about that. Like, maybe you need alignment.
It won't keep you where you're going. And so I use that metaphor the same way. It's like alignment between two people is important, because when we are aligned, then it's easier for us to be comfortable in getting to where we're going. So I don't use lead as much as I use align.
Okay. I love that.
And lead is interchangeable, because there'll be times where a woman is going to be able to lead in that capacity, and that's okay.
That's real. Like, I feel like in my household, that's something my dad has always acknowledged about my mom. He's like, she leads just as much as I do. Like, this is something that we're both doing. Everything that we've created for you and your brother and our family, that's a we thing. Like,
for sure.
He's always giving her props and her praises. So it's just interesting. Just being in a time where it seems like men just don't really like value women. Like, it's just like, and it's not all men. I know it's not all men for sure, but it just seems to be like a pervasive kind of culture that is just cultivating, where it's just like, fuck women. Like, even we could talk about femicide. Like,
I mean, that's a huge thing.
Let's talk about it. I mean, he talked about patriarchal violence in the book here, and it's a huge problem. Like, especially Black women. Like, I think it's between the ages, it's like mid-20s to like mid-30s. Like, the number one cause of death for women is like being murdered, homicide.
Yeah, I will say that Joseph is pretty clear about his perspective on patriarchy, right? Like, he sees it as something that is oppressive, not only just for women, but for men and males and boys as well. And so one of the things he argues is, like, he kind of likens it to racism, right? So, you know how when we talk about white supremacy, and for people to want to call themselves allies, for instance, they can't just say that they're not racist. They have to be anti-racist, meaning they have to be actively doing things to combat racism
for sure.
In their everyday life, right? So he kind of brings forth the idea of, like, being anti-patriarchal, patriarchal or anti-patriarchy, which is something that was kind of novel to me, because I feel like people don't really have that stance, especially in my, my experience, men who may be aware of the ills of patriarchy. I don't necessarily see them combating patriarchy actively. And so he even gave an example of, having seen a woman at a dog park who was being harassed by men, and how, he didn't just stand by and let that happen. He actually actively, stood up to those men and spoke up on behalf of the woman, even when she wasn't there to hear it. You know what I mean? So, I just feel like that's something that we need to be seeing more of, because I do, like, even later in the book, he talked about how Black women show up so much for Black men, and how we don't often get that same in return when it really matters, right? Like the bystander effect, something going on, which I understand, because it's, violence is pervasive, you know what I mean? And so, you got to have your own self-interest in terms of wanting to preserve your safety too. But there are some situations where
present day it is a little bit more nuanced, only because we've been desensitized to violence present day at a level that we probably haven't seen as a humanity. You would have to go back into, like, the dark ages of Europe. I guess, and I guess people push back on that, because there's always been elements of violence, but it's now, like, so desensitized to where seeing death is normal.
And even, I mean, I will say that in that example, he was approaching men that he did not know.
Correct.
And so I can understand a man wanting to mind his business in a situation like that, right?
You have to know the inherent danger. And I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Right. But the thing about it is, so even if you're not comfortable doing that, there's certainly going to be situations where you are with people that
Absolutely.
People that you have trust with, who they see you as somebody who they value your perspective.
Correct.
And I don't know how often, I mean, I can't say I haven't been in those spaces, but I have been in spaces where, men who may not necessarily agree with certain things that are happening will just sit by and allow their friends to do certain things and say certain things. And I do feel like we need to, encourage our men to be more vocal about things like that.
Absolutely. So this is a conversation that happens on so many layers. The first thing I want to say is I believe they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? The going back to the story that he told, the woman was jogging with her dog, approached the dog park, kind of looked around. It was like 4 or 5 dudes there. Like, all right, I'm the only woman. Let me go ahead. She was taking inventory.
Yeah.
And obviously when she turned around, that's when the gentleman made the remarks, and then the other gentleman co-signed, and it was catcalling and you know what I mean, the sexual harassment. If it's unwarranted, it's sexual harassment. So at that point, obviously she turned around and left in haste, which is she's preserving herself. And then that's when, as Frederick tells, he like, yo, what's wrong with y'all? And he approached the men. Any man that step up in that manner, it is honoring that, but understand the ramifications of your actions.
Yeah.
Understand that your life could end in that day.
Yeah.
Because anybody is capable of anything.
Yeah.
And so if you're ready to accept that and understand what comes with that, then by all means do that.
Yeah.
If you are not, then figure out other ways to still be, to still stand on your ideology.
Right.
But I bring that up to say, the reason why I said ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, because let's unpack that. Before they got there was a why. There was a pathology that created the outlook that made them comfortable enough to sexually harass the woman in the name of jest. Because from their perspective, they didn't view it as sexual harassment. They viewed it, and I'm obviously, speculating, right, based on the story that was told.
Right.
But I don't get the impression that they viewed it as sexual harassment. That's why they felt so comfortable enough to do it.
Right.
It's a lived experience that they've experienced that allowed them to get there. And until we address that, then all we're doing is fighting symptoms at the surface. So, and he kind of alluded to it, he being the author, Frederick Joseph. He said, I could have beaten him to a bloody pulp and then dragged her to her doorstep as tribute. It still don't undo the experience.
Right.
She still have the trauma of that lived experience.
Yeah.
So until we get to the core of the environments that's creating the behaviors and rectify the environments that's creating the behaviors, we will forever be fighting symptoms. Now, that is not an excuse for us as men and women alike to wash our hands up like, shit's too much going on. And the reason why I put myself in check is because we can see it. I'm gonna go back to the analogy. Whoever named water, whoever recognized water wasn't a fish, right? Whoever invented water wasn't a fish. Black men specifically, can easily identify racism under the same cloak.
Right.
But they can't identify that level of patriarchy. Case in point, I'll use the same story. She pulled up to the dog park. She took inventory. All right, this don't look like an environment that's for me. Let me do what I need to do. I pull up in any space. The first thing I do is take inventory of the other Black people that's there. Right? And we recognize that's a pathology of a lived experience for Black people. And when I ask that question of most Black people, they say the same thing. We can recognize that. As men, we can recognize that and say, well, the reason why is because I need to be able to, for my own safety, identify and try my best to navigate the environment. What she did was the same thing and determined that that environment is not conducive to her. So she decided to leave. And that's the challenge of, I think, that men can be better at in creating community, is understanding that our responsibility is to always, not sometimes, always create a safe space for women in our environments. And if we're intentional about doing that, then that looks like holding each other accountable. And then now you're asking men to hold each other accountable to the actions of one another. And that's the part that gets challenging.
Because
definitely.
Like, I just saw someone on Threads talking about how it was a woman. She was talking about how she doesn't like to go to the barber shop anymore to get her, line up whatever she needs because of the culture in there and what they're talking about, how they're talking about women. Like she said, one guy had said he saw some woman walking past the door or something. I get her pregnant and leave her as a single mother. Like what?
Yeah.
Who's? What kind of mindset is that?
Yeah. And that's not anything that I haven't heard before in barbershop environments and other. Society has classified it as locker room talk.
Yeah.
Now
it starts a lot earlier than
so
those environments.
Now the conversation is right. What's the root of that?
Yeah.
The root of that is, in many ways, it's just about the objectification of the woman in that. Well, how did we get to the point where we only view women as objects?
Yeah.
And then when you start unpacking that, again, this is not for us to, and when I say us, this is not as men for us to make the excuse, well, it's something that's just been perpetuated throughout society, therefore it is what it is.
Right.
And a lot of times that's the easiest thing to say, but that's when I always create the parallel with our understanding of racism.
Right.
Because we understand, despite how often it happens, we understand that it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we always speak up against it in some sort of fashion. And in many ways, when patriarchy represents itself in the objectification of a woman, just like you described, then it happens, but that don't mean it should happen. So therefore, we should always speak out and identify it as wrong.
Yeah.
The challenge is we haven't identified it. And I want to leave room for nuance because I think the challenge that we have as men and women, men hate being grouped and women hate being grouped because it removes the autonomy. But when I say and this is just a disclaimer for people that'll be listening, when I say that, I understand that there is margin for error.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking in absolutes.
Right.
So it's not all men. It's not all women. There is nuance in there. So I feel like it's necessary to say that. But when you peel back the layers, and get to what's driving the behavior, then we can address what the root cause of a lot of these behaviors and ideas are. Why do a man feel so comfortable objectifying a woman?
Yeah. I mean, I do think a lot of it is larger than just kind of individual situations, right? We know that it's a systemic thing.
Correct.
There's a lot of systems that are in place that kind of perpetuates patriarchy.
Yeah.
But just, I guess, on that individual level, one thing that Frederick Joseph did mention is, his kind of assessment of media, going back, looking at some of the things that he watched growing up.
Yeah.
So he mentioned specifically The Wood, for an example, which I love that movie.
Me too. but then when he was like criticized, I was like, oh, actually.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, even watching it when I was younger, I identified that as being something wrong, but it kind of is so normalized.
But not like sexual assault wrong.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it made me think, because it made me think of a situation when I was younger, when I was like maybe a teenager.
Yeah.
And I was in New Jersey. I was visiting in the summertime, and I was walking by like a group of boys, right? And they were varying ages, maybe like 12, 13.
Yeah.
Youngest was maybe like 7, 8.
Right.
So I'm walking by, and the 7 or 8-year-old smacks me on my ass.
Yeah.
And the other little boys are like laughing and cheering him on and shit. And I'm like, and reflecting back on that, I'm like, that's a situation like where boys, they learn that very young.
Yeah.
That locker room talk and that objectification of women.
Absolutely.
Sexualization of women, all those things happens at a very young age. So it's something that has to be addressed at a very young age.
And a lot of times it's dismissed as, innocence.
Boys
When
boys.
What is innocent about like non-consensually putting your hands on someone?
I was so appalled. I didn't even respond. I was just so appalled. And they kept going, walking. We were like walking in opposite directions down the block. So.
Well, it's the understanding of consent, to your point. And then the lack of autonomy a lot of times that women have in that. Like the same lack of autonomy that I feel in the realm of racism is the same lack of autonomy that women feel in the realm of patriarchy.
Yeah.
And so the reason why they didn't feel like it was wrong, and I could say this because there was a time I didn't feel like it was wrong. I'll give you a story. When I was 12 years old in 8th grade. So I was probably 13. home economics. We baking cookies and home ec, back, I'm aging myself now because they don't even do stuff like that anymore. But we was baking cookies and all of that. And now granted, all of us, this is people that I have kinship with. All of us are friends. But I would have never in that lens then viewed it as anything inappropriate. I literally took some of the flour, made sure it was on my hands, and put my handprint right on the back of her jeans. Bow! Right there. And we laughed about it and joked it, and that was that. And it was just like, but at the same time, I got a relative that in his youth, they had to literally fight to get him off of the registry because they criminalized him because of a similar action.
Oh, wow.
And he was on the sex offenders registry as a child.
Wow.
And when I say child, like literally, I was 13. That's a child.
Yeah.
But similar actions. And so
from a
what was in jest and we might have viewed it as innocent, even the woman didn't view it as problematic in that moment, or at least she didn't express that to me because she could have felt completely violated and never said anything.
And that's what I was going to say. It's like from a female perspective, like, we're in school and you have a little crush on a little boy and he might do something like that. Yeah. And you wouldn't feel like offended by it. You would be like, oh, my crush showing me attention.
But somebody I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know you.
It's the meme. It's sexual assault versus flirting. I like you. It's flirting. I don't like you. It's sexual assault.
That's real.
But to go back to the story in the wood, though, now what was the why? Why did I do that? Because one of my friends was like, I bet you won't do it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. That was the extent of it. That was the extent of it. It wasn't more thought put into it than that. And so in that, what was the lesson? Well, from a very young age, much like the story that you told, as boys, we've been conditioned by societal norms to not take into account the autonomy of a woman and how she feel. Because if I did, let's reverse the roles. If he had dared me to do that to one of the homies that was a male, would I have done it? Under no circumstances would I have done it. There was not a dollar amount. You see what I'm saying? So it's like all of that plays into the conditioning. And so a lot of it says I got a whole bunch of quotes and stuff. It's no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Yeah. And in many ways, we're all just well adjusted. Yeah. And that looks different for every person. That does not justify where we are, why we are, but that helps to better understand how we arrived here. And once you understand the why, then that's when you can heal it. So for me, in looking at the book, I went back through a historical context and I started to research, and I still have more research to do because obviously the couple weeks is not enough time for me and how I deep dive. But to look at the parallels between the patriarchy of Europe, because there was a you can pinpoint a time where patriarchy became status quo, and it aligns right with colonialism. And so you look at everywhere the European colonized, you'll see two things. You'll see the implementation of religion, and you'll see the implementation of patriarchy, and they go hand in hand. And in many ways, as you see in the present climate that we're in, they feed one another. So now, okay, we have to better understand as Black people, as descendants of Africans and indigenous people, we have to understand how we viewed the world and the understanding of masculine and feminine before colonialism. And it has such a much deeper spiritual context than the physical entities of man and woman that has been completely lost in the atrocities that because we've been broken and then reformed and fashioned to serve the purpose of the system that broke us. Right. And so I started to go down that rabbit hole of, okay, what did the masculine and feminine look like in pre-colonial Africa versus pre-colonial Europe? And the patriarchy always existed because from what I'm learning, it has always existed in Europe because in the Anglo, because that's the way they've been conditioned. Now their why is different. I have a lot of theories on that I'll keep to myself.
Yeah.
And maybe we could talk about off air,
definitely.
right?
Okay.
But when I look at the juxtaposition, there was always spiritual context to the nuance of masculine and feminine when you look at pre-colonial Africa.
Yeah.
It was never about the physical anatomy of men and women as much as it was about how we, again, aligned
As
with one another,
counterparts.
right, to create community.
Yeah.
And that alignment starts first with the family. And so my theory for present day, and I spoke on this several times before, what truly is going to heal us as a community is our understanding of family and how the masculine and feminine relates to family. If we can...
How do you define family, though? Do you mean that as like a mother and a father in a household, or do you...
Or pre-colonial community?
I do. So, fair question. I do view it as the understanding of the masculine and feminine that creates the harmony that's conducive to the children. So, a lot of times... I'll use my own story. Like my mother and father, they're divorced. They were together 35 years and got divorced. And so I've seen so many different things, right? But knowing what I know as a man, they should have been nowhere near each other. Even that at the expense of my own existence.
Yeah.
They should have been nowhere near. There shouldn't have been a world where they collided because... of the traumas that he experienced and the traumas that she experienced that was never not only revealed, never healed, and in many ways to this day. And yet these are the two people that's tasked with trying to create an environment that's conducive to the welfare, the physical, mental, emotional, psychosocial welfare of children.
But don't you think that's where like
community.
Greater community comes in, though? Like, so... I don't know what your
Absolutely.
upbringing was
Aunts,
like.
uncles,
Absolutely.
grandparents, cousins.
Absolutely.
Because even if you have, a perfect quote unquote situation where there's a mother and father who are in perfect harmony, there's still going to be gaps that can be filled by other people in the community.
Absolutely. And that's 100% accurate. But how do we strengthen the community?
Yeah.
It starts with the family. It has to start with and by family, I'll say it has to start with the nuclear family. It has to start with the nuclear family because what are communities made up of?
I mean, they're made up of families.
What are
I just
societies
feel like
made up
society, like we're kind of progressing beyond just like the nuclear family. I feel like things look different now. We even have to consider like LGBTQ people,
Absolutely.
like, households with two mothers or two fathers, so
I think it's healthy to want to have like duality within a household where there's masculine and feminine. I don't think it has to happen with a man and a woman.
Right.
That can look in a lot of different ways.
So I do give room for how we continue to grow. That's why I didn't say man and woman and I said masculine and feminine.
Right.
So here's another theory that I have in my understanding. Most, because I haven't seen most homosexual relationships or however you classify it, because I always want to be sensitive to the way they want to be classified.
Right.
The dynamic always exists, the masculine and feminine representation. Always.
But I wonder about that though, because I wonder how much of that is like inherent, how much of that is still conditioning. Because regardless of whether your sexual orientation or romantic inclinations are to be homosexual,
correct,
you're still impacted by societal norms,
absolutely,
and upbringing and socialization to be a certain way. So I'm not saying it's wrong. It's possible that some of that is inherent in us, that we are all inherently more feminine or more masculine, depending on just who we are as individuals. Yeah. But also the way that's expressed, I'm wondering if that's impacted by conditioning.
And I do believe that it's a combination of both. I believe it's very difficult because of where we are in society. It's very difficult to say that the conditioning bears no, repercussion on it. That's how we're conditioned as society. So absolutely, I'll say that is a part of it. But I'll also say a part of it is inherent as well, because a lot of things as it pertains to our relation to one another as people and as men and women alike, it's a lot of things that I was never taught. but I understood inherently. Not that society taught me per se, because there's some things that I have learned through society, or I like to say conditioned through society. And then I grow, evolve, and learn more. And then I cross-reference that conditioning versus what I'm learning and say, hey, is there alignment? Okay, I'm fine with that conditioning. If there's misalignment, then I'm like, I don't think I need to be operating like that no more. And I pivot. And so I am very aware and sensitive when I talk about the nuclear family to give room. And I use the language give very cautiously, because I'm not an authority on anything. So I don't want people feel like I'm talking down. But when I acknowledge the masculine and feminine, I talk about the alignment of two individuals to create harmony. Where I'm evolved to now, if that alignment is found between two women or two men, I don't feel like anybody's humanity should be denied. I feel like at that point, is this alignment conducive to the overall welfare of the family? Mental, physical, psychosocial, and otherwise. If that is the case, who am I? I'm just living and learning and trying to better understand the world around me as well.
No, that's real. And I guess I'm just thinking about the Black community too, and just how many people grow up in single parent households.
Correct.
And it's just like, okay, well, who's supposed to be that?
And even in that, now it goes back to community, because that's fair. Like I used to be a lot more stubborn than I am now. When I was younger, I would say I would never date a woman that doesn't have a healthy relationship with her father. Or a father figure. Like that was like a huge thing for me, because the first man that you learn to love is your father. And so it's so many things that becomes inherent in the dynamics of that relationship that's healthy for a relationship that I can cultivate with you. And I would encourage women to review the dynamics of the relationship that they have with their mother or mother figure in the same light. Because again, if you know how to love, appreciate, and respect your mother eternally, then what does that look like? And is that healthy? And then you can you could use that as a litmus to pretty much tell the story, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So if he probably a piece of shit to his mother, chances are he's not going to turn over a leaf and say, you know what, I'm going to worship the ground you walk on the way you need me to. So in those single parent household dynamics, it's always a parent figure, a mother or mother figure, father or father figure. Because my father, I've learned a lot of things from my father. He's not the only father figure in my life. I have other men that I look to with a certain reverence. That I can look to for mentorship and ask them questions to get an added perspective from with my father. And that doesn't invalidate my pops, and it doesn't devalue what he offered. And so I always encourage people to try to find that type of alignment. Like, yes, we've been blessed with the parents that brought us into this world. And there is from my perspective, there is certainly a divinity in that, like in the vessels that created us. We couldn't be us in the capacity that we are in any other way. But don't limit your worldview to just what your parents or your immediate friends could offer. Look for other mentors and other people with a little bit more lived experience than you that you can extract from to help add value to your walk and how you lead. That makes it very difficult, though, again, because when we think of a single parent dynamic, my mother was raised by a single mother. My father was raised by a single mother. And they came together. And one thing that they were very, very good at is I definitely didn't understand a lot of the stuff that was, I'm not going to say understand, because I did understand. I didn't know a lot of the things that was transpiring. They did a great job of keeping their business. It wasn't until I became a man that it was like, oh, all of that was going on? Like, that happened?
Right.
That happened? Like, and it created, I started to look at my parents differently. I went through a period where I had so much, resentment for my pops. And then I learned more. And then the lived experience changed. And then I started to understand and learn my mother more. And then it made me understand why she was the way she was. And what I learned is, and I don't want to veer too far off, it's like when you talk about what's the root cause, not the symptoms. Well, I'm a product of two people. Okay, what were they a product of? Who told them? Who taught them? Who said, what do you want to do? Whoever asked, like, I encourage everybody in our generation to ask our parents, have anybody asked them, what do they want? No, fluff, no hidden agendas, no, like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you love to do? And that was a dynamic that I went through with my mother coming out of she and my dad divorce was finalized in 2017. They separated in like 2015. They separated. My mother came back down to Atlanta where I was. Literally, she wasn't even down here full 30 days, got diagnosed with leukemia. And pretty much from that point, and for the next 7 or so years, we lived together.
Okay.
And I learned my mother in a completely different way. I called my pops like, hey, you did this for 35 years. You did good, Chad. But at the same time, it was so many ways me and my mother's relationship evolving our understanding of one another. And then I realized something happened in 2018. And forgive me, I don't want to feel like I'm commandeering the narrative, but something happened in 2018. My grandmother passed away. My father's mother passed away in 2018. And so she was diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer in 2015. And they said, get your affairs in order. And this is a Black woman that's born in the 30s. A doctor don't tell her nothing. Only God can. And that's what she told them. And she went on to live another 3 years after they told her to get her affairs in order. They was talking weeks to months. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, I hear what you said, but me and God having a different conversation. So we always knew, based on that, every moment that we have with her is a moment to cherish. And if we didn't know that before, we really knew that then. But in 2018, she started to fall ill again. And this was around July. And I get a call from my cousin. And this is one of my closest cousins on my father's side. And me and him always compete for who's granny's favorite. Like, we literally be trying to one-up each other. Like, he, gifts, little stuff. And this was 2018, in July of 2018. 2017, my grandmother's birthday is in November. Aretha Franklin was touring, and Aretha Franklin is my grandmother's favorite. He got her tickets to go see Aretha Franklin for her birthday. So he one-upped me.
Definitely.
It wouldn't.
I can't compete with
that. So, you know what I mean? She probably, when she passed, I'm sure he was the fave when she passed, because that's a tough act to follow. But what I learned in that, he called me, he said, yeah, it's not looking good, yo, get up here. And so I came up there immediately. And when I went in, I tried to be as normal as possible. It's like, just chilling. Like, it's the fam. Like, we talking. Because she still ain't like she bedridden or nothing. She walking around, stuff like that. Like, but I went up to see her. We just started talking how we talk. And you know how they say people know when it's time? She just, and I have a very good relationship with my grandma. Like, when I first graduated high school, I went back up to Maryland. I would spend months at a time up there because she was taking care of my great aunt who had dementia. And so I would be up there and seeing that dynamic. That's a whole nother story. Again, just wisdom from Black women, from a time that I know nothing of in the physical, just the story. So I've heard, the amount of stories that I heard are endless.
Yeah.
But in this instance, it's July 2018. She's telling me stories that I've never heard before. And it's like we literally sat for hours, and it's almost as if she recounted her life to me from childhood until us sitting in that room. And what changed for me in my understanding, and this ended up helping me to better understand my mother in the position that she was in. She shared a story with me. My grandmother was a lot of things, but she was a seamstress, hairdresser. So just think of a woman and a black woman from that era. I mean, she had all of those qualities, but she could draw as well. And a lot of my artistic ability I get from my father, who get it from her. So she would draw and paint and stuff like that. My dad draw and paint, and I draw and paint, but none of us were ever like formally taught. It was just something that we taught ourselves. And she said, Colonel, because that's what my family call me. She said, Colonel, you know, we was having, what you call them things? She said, like a career day. We was having a career day at my elementary school. And, you know, we had to write about what we wanted to be. And all the kids, we wrote about what we wanted to be. And I wrote in there, I wanted to be an architect. And so this is my first time ever hearing that. Like I never heard this story before. And she was like, the teacher told me, young black girls can't be architects. Pick something else. And when she shared that with me, like it like hit me to my core. And I know now I'm trying to suppress all of the emotions of knowing that she's in her last days and not trying to make it uncomfortable for her. I felt, for some odd reason, I felt like being too emotional in that moment would have made it a moment. And I wasn't trying. I tried to make it as normal as possible. Hey, Granny, I'm just popping up. Stopped up for the weekend. What's up? You know what I mean? Unbeknownst to the phone calls and all of that. And so now I'm holding back tears and stuff like that because, again, I don't want to make the moment awkward. And that made it even tougher, hearing that. And so I just asked how many little black girls were told to pick something else because they couldn't do it. And the reason why it made me review my mother's relationship, because now I'm a pivot. Her dynamic in 2018, she's starting back at zero. She had nothing from the divorce with my pops. She get punched to the ground fighting this leukemia. And now she's trying to rebuild from that. And we had this conversation, and I was being a little bit naive and disingenuous. I was like, my youngest brother is a man now on his own. He's doing his own thing. Like, you have a clean slate to literally do whatever you want to do. You don't have no kids to take care of. You don't have no responsibilities. You just got you. And you can, if you decide you want to pick up and do something tomorrow, you could pick up and do it. And it wasn't that easy because I wasn't taking into account her lived experience.
Her conditioning. And
I asked her, I said, Mom, what do you like? She was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so then I had to realize, I said in that moment, I told her, I said, Mom, listen, she had my oldest sister at 15 years old. She got pregnant at 14. So since age 14, you've always had to consider somebody else. Whether it was children, whether it was my pops in a marriage, now you are literally starting over. And so I just told her, I was like, the only person you have to consider is you. That's it.
Yeah, I feel like that's rough for Black women, though.
Oh, for sure.
And it kind of, just a segue a little bit, because Frederick Joseph did talk a little bit about intersectionality, for instance. And it just made me think about, not to completely segue the conversation, but as you were talking, I was thinking about on Threads, and people were talking about intersectionality or, you know, Black womanhood and asking women, like, are they Black or are they women first? And, you know, there was different responses. Some people saying that they're Black first because, you know, when people see you, you know, non-melanated people see you, they see Black. But I don't agree with that because I feel like as a woman, you're going to see both. And the way that I'm interacted with as a Black woman specifically is going to be different from the way that people react to me and treat me if I were a Black man. And I think that our experiences are different because, you know, expectations of always provision of care and holding so much space for other people. That's something that's very specific to Black women.
The mammification of the Black woman.
Exactly. It's very specific to Black women. So I can't extract one of those identities from the other because they both contribute to who I am and my lived experience. So as you were talking about your mom, I'm like, I'm sure plenty of women can understand and resonate with.
Absolutely.
Not knowing what they want for themselves because they're always considering other people, whether it's a partner, whether it's their kids, or whomever they may be caretaking.
Correct.
Right. And he mentioned that he had, I think, a chapter about Black women as the mule, essentially. And it's like, like when you have been taught to just sacrifice for everybody around you. Like you were even saying earlier, like not only are Black women taking care of their children, but we taking care of Black men too. Like a lot of women are mothering men. Like, and you forget about your own inner child. You forget about your own dreams and, you know, what you want out of life because you just out here from a very early age too. And some of this is family dynamics too, where we see, you know, young girls raising their siblings and stuff like that. And it's just like, when do you ever just get to focus on you?
Yeah. No, that's real. And even to go back to my grandmother's story, again, she wanted to be an architect. What if somebody had spoke life to her?
Right.
And say that's absolutely something that you can be. How does that change the trajectory? So it made me hyper aware of a couple of things. One, it's very important that we speak life to one another. Two, we have to take into consideration, and especially all of us do, but because the conversation is around patriarchy and we speaking specifically to women in kind of a nuanced Black lived experience, what do you want to be? Like, what does the childhood you, and that's why I started telling my mom this. I was like, you owe it to 14-year-old you, like 13-year-old you, before you were ever pregnant, before you were ever, you owe it to, you know, that little girl. Like, what did you want to do? The ironic thing though that my mother shared was, she said, you know, when I was a kid, you know, the same thing when they have like those career days, she was like, all I ever wanted to be was a mother. She would say that. She was like, I wanted 10 kids. It's 9 of us. I wanted 10 kids.
Wow.
It's 9 of us. She miscarried one.
Oh, wow.
So it's literally, she was like, I wanted, so everybody's lived experience is different. But again, look, I always talk about gene and gene expression. Because on a scientific level, we can understand clearly gene and genetic and how that gene is expressed. And the number one contributing factor to determine how a gene expressed, do you know what it is? Environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
We can understand that correlation in science, but we can't understand that correlation when we talk about the conditions and the environments that we in. So how, like, the difference between me and a lot of my peers, we grew up in the same environment. What's the difference? I'll even use my brother. I'm not even gonna use my peers, I'll use my brothers. Like, my older brothers chose very hard roads, and you know, they lived a real street life. Why did we grew up in the same environment? We grew up under the same disciplinary rules and things like that. But even though our genes are the same, how the environment impact our genes is different. I chose to express one way, they chose to express another way.
But even in the same household, like, we experience our parents differently.
100%. Because my older siblings experienced a much younger, more vibrant version of my mother. We experienced a more mature, because my mother was going into her 30s when she had me. She was much younger when she had my older siblings, you know, a teenager into a young woman. So to your point, all of those things play a dynamic. But whoever asked the little girl, what do you want to be? And then pour into that. Whoever asked the little boy, what do you want to be? And then pour into that. Oftentimes, as Black people in our lived experience, we never get that courtesy.
We were just talking about this on the way over here.
And having that conversation with my grandmother, it made it a stark reality for me. When she was like, she wanted to be an architect, I was like, damn, I got sad, because I was like nobody should tell a child they can't be something. Like, we know all the reasons why that's wrong, but like, then I started to think, like, what if somebody told her, hell yeah, you absolutely can be and do whatever. And it immediately made me think of my mother. Well, what did that 13-year-old girl want to do with her life before her circumstances changed and she started to live a completely different reality? And then I started to look at my peers and I look at us in our lived experience. What did the little girl in you owe it to that little girl in you.
Go on the spot.
You owe it to that little girl in
That's
you.
real.
to validate whatever those things are, but what we become.
Yeah,
that's real.
I feel like we're on a journey to doing that.
Absolutely.
Though. I feel like
we're doing it right
podcast,
now.
Yeah, we're actively doing things to honor our inner child. And for me personally, my inner angsty teen too. Because, you know, that was definitely a period of my life that I still resonate with. Yeah. So, but just doing more, having conversations like this. Yeah. I was very soft spoken as a child and still am. You know, I didn't like doing public speaking. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, is to have a platform where I can leverage, a platform I can leverage to have conversations and become more comfortable with my speech and being vocal and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, we working it. We doing it every day.
Yeah, like we're similar in nature. I feel like that Pisces moon makes us both just a little more introverted. Always drop some astrology in there. Like, look,
I'm cool with that too. A lot of people stigmatize astrology. I feel like it's very relevant. I feel like it's very relevant. I feel like the more we try to marginalize our experience, the greater disservice that we do to the true complexities of this existence as human beings. We have a very finite understanding of this world around us, and then we look at it as if it's the end all be all.
Right. And and
that's it's so much, and that's
so many levels to this. Yeah. But I love what you touched on for sure. Like, you know, honoring the inner child, honoring the dreams of your inner child. And that goes for girls, that goes for boys, however you identify, right? I feel like that's just so important for us to hold on to our dreams, because, bruh, life is tough out here.
It is.
It's tough out here. It is. Sometimes all I had to like keep me going and like keep the hope alive is a dream.
Yeah. And just as a disclaimer, I do identify and speak to the binary in my narrative, but that I just feel it important. I'm not using the binary to invalidate those people that live their existence outside of the binary. Right. I'm not. I'm just speaking to my lived experience. So when you hear me reference boy and girl and man and woman, I just want to give a disclaimer to anybody that's watching and listening that, yes, I'm going to identify with the binary because that is my lived experience. Right. Yeah. I don't feel like that should invalidate anybody who live outside of the binary and what their experience is and how they live their life, because I don't believe in the denial of someone's humanity because you don't understand their way of life. Right. It's not my position to infringe upon somebody. Whether I agree or disagree becomes a moot point. Right. Because I look at the overarching point that's just as important. I don't want to say more. Just as important to me is understanding that you have quality of life and that you have the ability to live out your autonomy and your humanity in a way that adds value to the lived experience. You're not harming anybody. I'm cool with that. I have no qualms.
What I will say is I feel like throughout this entire podcast recording today, you have had different instances where you waking it up. Like that's one of a segment that we want to have at the end of the podcast, where we talk about something that we want to wake up. We just want to illuminate something with our audience. And I feel like you've dropped gems throughout the entire
we're going to have to do a part two, because I'm sure it's other stuff. I feel like we strayed away from the book a little bit. It's a lot in there, though. It's a lot.
Look, we might do a part two.
Yeah, it's a lot to
I just know I'm looking at the time.
To unpack. Like, it's a lot to unpack for sure.
It is, definitely.
I mean, we could talk for hours about
like, for real. So we getting into Wake It Up too?
Yeah, I think it's a good.
Okay.
What do you
think? Wake It Up. Yeah. So look, my Wake It Up. Trans lives matter. That is my wake it up. It's really
that's
simple.
A good transition, right? Because we're
just
talking about, the
non-binary,
people who operate outside of that, binary.
For sure. Like, come on, guys. I mean, especially as the Black community, you can't say that you're for Black liberation if you're not for the liberation of all Black people. So that includes the LGBTQ community.
And that goes back to intersectionality.
Yes, exactly. So, come on, we need to do better about protecting trans lives. We need to do better about advocating for them, for their rights. Look, we just need to do better about respecting people for who they are and who they want to identify as. Like, that's something that I just never, even as a young person, like trans people and stuff like that never like, people that are confused, I don't get it. What is there to be confused by? Like, that's how somebody chooses to identify. There's nothing for you to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, it's just for you to respect who they choose to show up as in this world. And we really just got to do a better job at just respecting people, like, for real, and how they choose to show up. So that's my wake it up.
Okay.
Look.
Well, mine is a little bit different. So, kind of going back to honoring the inner child. And I don't want to be insensitive because I know this economy is trash right now. And the job market is trash.
Yeah.
But I think that we got to stop being so loyal to these jobs. I personally recently got laid off myself.
Yeah.
Earlier this week, I found out that my entire team at my big corporation that I work for, which I won't mention any names, but they laid off our entire internal communications team, which is interesting because if you think about it, even in terms of, you know, businesses wanting to frame, you know, we're a family and all these things, but our team, our specific purpose was to relay information to employees, centering employees, storytelling around building, you know, morale and things like this for employees. And yet that was one of the first to go.
Absolutely.
That's the least considered. When it comes time to try to make the finances make sense and the bottom line and all that good stuff, which, you know, we live in a capitalistic society. So that's always going to be the bottom line is how much money, how we can maximize our profits.
Correct.
But I just want to encourage people, if you have the capacity to invest more in your personal interests, your passions,
Absolutely.
take the time to do that.
Absolutely.
These jobs ain't loyal to you. They don't care. They will let you go in a minute.
All they care about is
and
the
they'll have
bottom
your
line.
job posted,
That's
you
it.
know. So any opportunity you have, because I'm going to be using my time, because, you know, grateful enough, I get a little bit of a severance. And so I have a little bit of wiggle room to be able to really invest more of my time into things that I value.
Correct.
And so if you ever have that opportunity, like I said, I'm not insensitive to our economic, world that we're in right now.
For sure.
So yeah, that's my wake it up.
For sure.
That. That's a
For
real
sure. My wake it up would be to, you know what? My wake it up is directed towards the black capitalist. So I believe that the blueprint, slavery was the blueprint for capitalism. There's nothing more capitalistic than free labor. And the residue of that has just been repackaged into what we know as free market capitalism now. But we don't understand that the context of free market capitalism is wage slavery. So a rose by any other name smells just as sweet. In chattel slavery, the proverbial quote unquote master was housed, fed, clothed the slave, took care of the welfare of the slave to serve the purpose of slavery. Well, in capitalism, the slave has to house, feed, clothe, and maintain their own welfare. And when you look at it through that lens, you better understand that it is capitalism, in my opinion, is inherently racist because the foundation of it is such. So to call yourself a black capitalist is a direct contradiction, in my opinion, in many ways, to how capitalism works and flows in what the overall welfare of your community look like. So to that, I just give perspective. There's never been a time in modern history where wages outpaced inflation. If the cost of goods and services increases exponentially more than the dollar amount you get paid for the work that you do, you can't survive. And if you can't survive, then what type of environment are we really living in? I think in many ways over the last decade or two, we've romanticized as Black people this idea of black excellence and capitalism. We put a real, we put a real beautiful face on capitalism and Black people's thriving in business and stuff like that. And we definitely have to make a living to be able to take care of our families and our communities. I do understand that. But the only reason why I wanted to preface that for this is so that we could also understand that it's a very thin line between, you know, taking care of your family and creating a way of life for you and unwittingly perpetuating the ideas that keep the whole. And I think everything, to speak to intersectionality, I think in many ways it's all grouped because what we're really dealing with is an informed minority versus an uninformed majority.
Yeah, and class is going to wipe that. Like any intersectionality we have is going to always be wiped out by class. Class is going to prevail because it doesn't matter if you black, white. Once you get past a certain amount of earnings, you're going to operate in your own self-interest.
Different interests, precisely.
Sure.
And so that's why one of my, like nails on the chalkboard is seeing people, particularly like you see hashtags now like Black capitalists, and you see this idea, and you got a lot of people doing like workshops and stuff like that. I ain't gonna say no names and nothing like that, but you kind of know, like it's a lot of people, they holding all of these different expos and all of that where they coming together and it's one big pep rally and a money grab at $500 a ticket. And people pay that willingly. Because we want to feel good. And then when we leave, we just had a little feel good, some coffee, tea, some conversation, and all of the same roots of capitalism. So my wake it up is, if you calling yourself a Black capitalist, I just ask you to rethink the dynamic and understanding of what capitalism is at its core and what it looks like
and who it serves.
And not only in the micro, but take a macro look. Look at what capitalism has done for the world. And for every positive correlation you can make with capitalism, the negative correlation makes it so that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So that's my wake it up.
I love that.
Yeah,
that was a real one. Hey. Well, look, this was a great episode. I'm actually kind of sad to be wrapping it up here, but maybe we'll do a part 2. We'll see, what's up with it. But yes, good people. Thank you for being here, joining us. Once again, this is Too Woke Podcast. I'm Danny Simone. You can follow me at The Mystic Model. And
this is Low Key C. You can follow me at Something About C on Instagram.
For sure. It's yours truly, Kay Nellz. Kaynellz.
Wait, tell them about your album.
Oh, yeah, I got, so I got some music I'm working on. Well, already finished up, just putting the finishing touches on it, getting it mixed, mastered, all of that good stuff. I got a single out right now called Friends. Had a listening session that both of y'all came to. So let me take a moment and say thank you for your presence. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks for the invite.
For coming out, absolutely. And, I, of course, gave all of the long story, the backstory about the content of the music, though. But my goal is to always just be true to myself in expression and in self-expression and trying to navigate that world too. Speaking of capitalism, the music business is the business of music.
Right.
Before there's any music, there's business. And if the business isn't, so just dealing with that dynamic, that power dynamic and that understanding, that's what this project is all about. It's called I Blame Y'all. So my goal is to get it finished up where I'm releasing it this year. I have to release it this calendar year.
Okay.
But it's just a money thing. Just putting the resources behind, because for those in the music business, mixing and mastering is the most expensive part because paying for the studio sessions and stuff, that's cool. Like that is a far less expense than paying for a quality mix and master. And so once I get that squared away, then we good. So I'm actively working on that, and we rocking and rolling. But I appreciate y'all. Thank you for sharing your platform with me, for sure.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Well, until next time, make sure y'all are following us as well at Too Woke Podcast on Instagram.
I don't think we've chosen our book for October,
Yeah,
but we may do like a
air.
poll or something on Instagram and get some feedback, because we have a couple of options we're thinking about for spooky season.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.